Okay, so in this third portion of the series here on making a plant and pottery to hold it in, we're going to work on modeling a flower. We're going to use a technique a lot like we used for the actual leaves. And I did bring in just a small picture. You can bring in any flower you want, but with this being our first one, let's start with something extremely simple. We're going to recall that we added the top of the stem here to have a little place for our flower to actually sit in. So that's going to be where the center of this is. We're going to go ahead and start with that. We're going to use just a regular ball, so Shift plus A. Also remember that your cursor should be centered to your scene. Doesn't really matter as much at this point because our things are not all centered anymore, but we still like to do that anyway. So mesh and a UV sphere. Don't forget that in the operators panel here, we have settings for when we first start off with a sphere. I'm not going to move my sphere again, just like I didn't move the cylinder. Moving it will lose the choices that we have on this side. So we're going to take this down because we do not need this much geometry on something that is going to be small enough to fit inside of that cup at the top of our stem. I'm going to take this down to maybe, let's do what we did for the stem. We did 6. So we'll do 6 and 6 on that. Once we get that in, we're going to go ahead and lift it up a little bit. We will scale it down with S because we want it to scale down all the way. When you are scaling something to a really small size, you want to make sure that your mouse never crosses over the center point, no matter which angle you're looking at, because if you do that, you actually go inside out. And we, although know how to fix that, why bother creating an issue when we don't have to have one? So I'm just going to continue to scale this down and work it until I get it into the top of my little cup here. We're also going to go into edit mode by hitting your tab key. And we're going to delete using Control++ to grow our selection. Let's go ahead and delete these vertices on the bottom. We're never going to see them, so we don't need them in there. Select all again and scale it down. Because we did go with 6, the same that we went for our actual stem number of sides here, let's go ahead and rotate this on the Z axis so that all lines up for us nice and even. Continue to manipulate it to get it centered. We can even go into 7 view. That might give us a better idea of what we're working with, and I can see that it's not rotated. Exactly perfect. So let's just do R and rotate it a tiny bit more. It looks pretty centered, so I'm going to scale up until I get close to what I want. We're also going to make the top part of this cup solidified, meaning it's going to have an inside so that it doesn't look invisible when you look down into it. And that's also going to help us with the gap between the bulb area and the cup. So we don't have to be too precise on getting it to fit perfectly. Just the closer we get, the nicer it is. Let me rotate this a little bit more. I'm just not happy with that. What did I do? I think what I did was I somehow extruded it. So let me delete this. Let me select all of this. I'll do the ++ to grow that selection. Make sure we got nothing else. Okay. Somehow I made a duplicate of it. So with that duplicated area still selected, deleting it was really easy to do. And there we go. I'm going to go right into my tool shelf, but I have to put this in edit mode first, so tab into edit, and I will set smooth shading. So that gives us a much nicer look. It doesn't look as faceted, so it looks rounder than it did previously. Alright, so this is the center. I think that's a pretty cute little one. Very low geometry, and we get the effect that we want. The next thing that we have to do is create petals. So we're going to actually just create one, and we can use it 5 times for each of the ones on the flower. You can, however, if you want to, after duplicating them, give them each a little bit of variation, just reshaping them a tiny bit on one of their edge loops or something. So let's go ahead and let's begin by pulling our starting geometry off of the actual bulb like we did for the leaves off of the stem. Remember, we also want to be able to have ease with working on extrusions and on scaling. So we're going to try to start our geometry off smartly so that we can use the X and the Y axes. So if we look at this from the front, 1 on your number pad, we know that this one here is on the X axis facing side. So that's the one we're going to use. And if we want to, we can actually probably do this for 6 petals rather than just 5 because it's got a nice 6-sided area to work with. So I'm just going to extrude this with E on the X axis just a little bit. And you can tell that we have a very thin area to start with, and it grows wider and rounds out. So let's just see if we can't accomplish something close to that. Again, in top view, I'm going to take this area and I am going to get this thinner here, I'd have to thin this side as well. So I'm just going to delete these vertices and let's start over. I'm going to grab the first 2, one that we started with. I'm going to use P for our separate menu and separate from selection. You cannot see it because it is nothing more than just an edge. Remember that edge turned into an object when we removed it from the edited piece here. So let's put our editable piece into object mode. And if we just simply right click where it is, you'll see that we select only that edge. Blender started about 3 versions ago, somewhere around there, where if you clicked in the same area, you could actually click through the mesh. So because the bulb was selected, if we click again, we'll get the little single edge there. Let's go ahead and put that in edit mode. Select all of it, which is just the 2 vertices, and we're going to scale it down on the Y axis. And that's where it's nice that when we start our geometry in a smart way, we have our axes to work with. So S and Y to bring that in a little bit. Now I can use my E and X to extrude it out. Don't worry about it coming out the bottom here. We're going to go ahead and fix that. We can even just move the whole thing up if we want to. But for now, I think I like it being in line with the actual edge of the center. So I'm going to come up here in the front or top view again. And I'm going to, I don't know. Yeah, that's thin enough, I think. Let's extrude it again on the X axis. And we're going to scale it out just a tiny bit. I hit extrude again. Let me delete that vertices. We're going to scale this on the Y. Remember, it's just a series of extrusions and scaling along the actual axis. So it's a little bit repetitious, but again, it's fun. And that is why we do this, to have some fun with it. I think this is going to be a very small petal. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue making it, and then we'll scale it all up. So it's no big deal. It's not like when you do something and it's not turning out exactly the way you expected. It's not like you have to turn around and start all over again. Lots of ways to work around what you've done or change it or even use it to your advantage. So there we have a pretty rounded little flower thing. Actually, I think it could be a little more rounded. It looks a little flat right there, so let's scale this back up on the Y. Give it one more extrusion on the X and scale that one down. And that's looking pretty good. I don't know why, but these don't seem to be very even looking to me. Again, you don't have to worry much about them. You just kind of fix them a little bit. Alright, so now to take care of the fact that this whole thing looks a little too small for our flower. Look how big that is compared to our petal. Totally not the right size. So let's just scale this up and pull it out. Maybe scale it up a little more and pull it out. And now this side is looking a little big, but I really like the size of the outside here. So we'll just go back in and we'll scale these down. I'm still using my scale on Y, although you can only scale an edge in one direction anyways. And I think that's pretty good. So there we have the first petal of our leaf, or of our flower actually started. Let's go ahead and give it a little bit of depth. Now, as where I took the leaves, we made a little caved in area. I think these might look cute, a little puffy. So what I'm going to do is give this some edge loops. We're going to go from the positive X along the X-axis. So let's just go ahead and give it, let's give it 5 of them. Right, I left clicked when I got to the 5 and right clicked to keep them all centered. I'm going to not do the entire edge from top to bottom. I'm just going to grab the center ones, and let me show you a little tool that we can use. To make selections in areas like this, you can use your control key. So if you hold control and you begin to make a lasso selection, you can get pretty detailed on where you're selecting things. And you see I didn't get those ones in the front. It's not a problem. I can just continue to hold my lasso and go up there and select those as well. With these selected, I can just lift them up a little bit. Use Control minus to decrease my selection. Pull it up a little bit more. Control minus and pull it up one more time. It's a little boxy. Maybe these should come up a little bit more. Let me go ahead and make the same selection on the other side. I have a feeling I'm going to be doing all those little edge loops again. Maybe the problem is these ones back here and those ones up front. Oh, and you see what I did? I selected one back here instead of deselecting correctly. I could show you one more tool or remind you about a tool that we used in the beginner's program. I'm wondering how many of you are out there saying, why isn't she using that? She taught it to us. And that would be proportional editing. So what I can do, since I really don't want to lose the work that I've already done on this one, and it's actually getting there. It's looking a little nicely curved, don't you think? I think so. Okay, so what I could do real quick, select all of this, Shift plus D to duplicate it along the X-axis. Put that in edit mode, select all of it, and in front view, if you guys remember, we can scale this all down to 0 on the Z-axis so that they're all straight and flat. So SZ0, enter. If I turn on my proportional editing, I can go ahead and pick the center vertex, maybe the center 2. No, just the center one to start with. Let's see what we've... Oh, put another edge loop right here. Let's see what we've got when we use our proportional editing. That actually turns out much nicer than what I modeled over there, didn't it? I think it did. Kind of lifted the whole thing up at one point. Neither one of them are all that bad. I think I got a little more puff on this one. This one isn't bad though. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. We're just going to stick with the one that we did by hand. And I did all that work after all. I'm going to go ahead and use smooth editing, smooth shading on it. And that looks pretty good. Alright, so I didn't really want to go into modifiers for quite a few reasons, but what I'd like to do is be able to have this same curved look, this puffed look, down on the bottom as well. So in order to achieve that, we really would be, well, we'd be kind of stupid not to use a modifier on it. It makes it so quick and simple. The only issue that we're going to run into is the origin. The origin is not set at a perfect alignment with the bottom of this actual petal. So I'm going to go into edit mode and we're going to fix that. I'm going to select one of these lower edges. Actually, I think that one's up a little bit. No, maybe not. Okay, I'm going to select one of these lower vertices on the bottom edge. And I'm going to snap with Shift and S my cursor to the selected. Now when I go back into object mode, one of the options that I have in my set origin is to snap my origin to the actual cursor. When I do that, you see that my origin is no longer over here. It's at the absolute bottom of this flower petal. So when I mirror it on the Z-axis, it's going to be lined up perfectly underneath. We'll see if that works out for us over here where this is still pretty flat and not curved up. So the Modifiers tab is the wrench icon. Click on the Add Modifier bar. And from the Generate section, we want to choose Mirror. The first thing that happens is that this is actually mirrored along the X-axis. That's because X is set by default. All we have to do is change it from X to Z. And now you can see that it's mirrored underneath. We want to leave merge on because what merge will do, I don't know. Yeah, let's leave merge on because what will happen is when this modifier is applied, the vertices from the top edge and from the bottom edge where they meet will actually merge into one. If we don't have merge, it will be like two separate islands. They won't be actually connected. And we want them connected because we're going to be modeling this a little bit more as we go along. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just hit apply on this. Now if we go into edit mode, you'll see we have one vertex here on each side. We don't have the top and the bottom, we have them combined. So there's our first petal for our flower. We want to give it some shape. We don't want it to be just this flat, boring looking thing. So we're going to go ahead and start bending it a little bit. This is where we'll use the proportional editing tool a little bit, I think. I haven't thought this far ahead, so we're going to kind of wing it here. I'm going to, give me just a minute. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and use proportional editing on this. And it's a technique that you don't find a lot of use for when it comes to proportional editing, but I'm going to try it anyway. So let's see what happens. I'm not exactly sure where I want to do this from, but I'm going to actually rotate this petal. So I'm going to start, I don't know where I'm going to start. I think I'll start in the middle here. And just let's try it and see what happens. So let's use R for rotate. And it's not exactly what I want because it's bringing the bottom down. But actually it's a pretty cool look right there. That could be kind of fun. Let me go ahead and just pull this edge this side. Whoops, I don't want the whole edge loop, so I'm going to have to select these individually. Sometimes it's fun, you never know what you're going to get till you actually try it. Let's take this edge and rotate it down a little so that it fits into the cup here. So R again, I'm going to lower the influence quite a bit. Rotate it up, and we can always pull it down like that. Not sure if I like the squished effect that I got down there, but I don't know if we're actually really going to see this at all. Let me turn proportional editing off for a moment. Pull those down a little. And let's see what we have. So we're going to select it all, lift it up. Let's see if we can't fit it into our little cup area here. Yeah, you know what? I'm not happy with that. I don't like that at all. Let's go back. I don't like that at all. This goes down nicely though, doesn't it? What if we were to take all of it, rotate it by 180 degrees? No. Let's rotate it, but on the Z by 180 degrees. Remember, proportional editing has been turned off. It doesn't really matter actually when it's all selected, but let's rotate this now on the Y-axis. And there we go. Not exactly what I want. The shape of it's not bad, but look at, the problem is that this is the part that came out of there, so that's not a good choice. Maybe if we select all and rotate it on X by 180, and then rotate it on Y a little. We're getting closer, I think. And we still have that nice curve over here. We don't have that icky messed up one that we had before. And we can just move this around and work it into place. The only thing we're going to have to remember is that we are going to have that lip on here from the double edge up here. So why don't we go ahead and take care of that now. I'm going to choose this. Remember when I talked to you guys about the unwrapping? And I said that if we're going to make extrusions on what we've done, that it actually is going to cause us to have to re-unwrap things, because if we extrude this edge, which is the very top edge here, no matter what we do with it in our window, that top edge is going to remain in line with this one. And the face that's created between this edge and the top of the extrusion is going to be all squished up here. We really don't want that. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to take these three edges Well, actually just this one here. And I'm going to use the solidify on it. And I'm going to give it a very, very thin thickness. And I think that is actually pretty good. Now you can see that this here, the back side of it, that is going to have the same texture as the outside of it right there where it is. They're lined up together perfectly on there. So I think that's going to be pretty good. This lip here is going to be so small, you're not going to be able to really see what kind of texture is on there. But the texture that will be on here is the same pixel from the top, from the front of the edge, to the back of the flower side. We'll see a little bit more on that when we actually go in here and texture that. We'll explain it a little bit more. Looking at that picture that we had here, seems kind of silly to look at it. Oh, now I don't have it anymore right now anyways. Let me go here and pull it up. These actually touch each other, and I kind of like that look. And here I made them thinner, remember? So why don't we just go ahead and let's scale this up a little bit on the y-axis. So X, S, and Y. It's also scaling out from its origin. So let's go back to set origin, origin to geometry, and put our origin where it belongs. If we cam in from the top kind of and scale on the Y, we can see how big that's getting. And made it a little more roundier as well. I'm not sure if that was a good thing or not. Let's go back. Let's scale it all over. So S, except for the Z axis. No, we have to do the Z this time because we've got some of these going up. So just scale. See, some of these things you can't really plan out. They just kind of happen as you go along. Alright, I think that looks pretty cute. It's a different kind of flower. It's our own. Nobody else will have a flower like it. I'm going to scale on the Y just a tiny bit to bring that to the corners. Perfect. Okay, so now we want to make this petal go all the way around. An easy way of doing it is by turning it with the actual bulb centerpiece here itself. This might actually be a little bit big for this, but we can make that a little smaller in a few minutes. So I am going to come in here to my pivot point, and my pivot point is going to be the active element. The active element is whatever element or whatever you've chosen last. So if I take this flower and I hit Shift D to duplicate it, right mouse click to snap it back where it came from, hold down my Shift button and right click on the center. This center is my active element. If I now rotate, it doesn't look like it's the active element to me. It's supposed to be. Nope, it's not. Okay, so let's see what happened here. I did active element. There we go. Now it's there. So now if I can go back into top view, I guess I just didn't click it hard enough. And I rotate it on the Z axis. I can rotate it to that point. You can see that my center is not absolutely perfectly set up with the area that I have it sitting in. So it's not a big deal. Let's just go ahead and move it a little bit. We'll adjust them as we go along. Don't worry about this crossover, we'll fix that. So picking that flower again, shift, duplicate, duplicate, shift right click. And again, we know this is our active element because the cursor is here. And I'm going to rotate it on Z again. One more time, I'll just adjust this a little bit. Click on just the flower and shift, duplicate it. Right click on the center, rotate on Z. Fairly easy. Whoops, let me pull that over here. Duplicate, click, and rotate. Let's rotate that just a little bit more. And our last one. And they all fit rather nicely. Not overcrowding each other too much at all. Butted up against each other. We don't have that gap that I was saying that I liked at first, but that's alright. I'm going to take this. And I don't know. I think I almost like it a little bit too big. We could lower it a little if we wanted to. Make it a little smaller. We just want to make sure that if we do that, we don't come out the bottom here. So let's go ahead and Control Z to put that back up there. And it's not lined up, so let's rotate it on the Z. Alright, so there we go. I know I said we could fix these, and we can. I'm going to make them so that they don't, run into each other there. But do we want to do it all the way so there's these gaps between them, or do we like it just like that? If you haven't learned by now, we won't really know until we actually do it. So I'm going to take these three, and I'm going to go into my view, so 7 view. And this way, when I scale them in, I'm going to take off the x-axis. So S, let's just do it on the Y. Bring them in a little. Move them around. I don't know if I like that. Or, let's see, we could also look at them in this direction like that, straight on, and give them a little rotation. And if we go around and give them all that same little rotation, just a little minor one, we kind of have them going so they're not bumping into each other. I think that works pretty good. When you're making stuff, always be open to making something different than what you originally set out to make. I don't know, very rarely do I actually walk away with the product in mind, or the product that I had in mind when I first started. It always turns out to be something different, which is a good thing. Keep the creative juices flowing. Okay, so there we go. In the next one, oh, should have taught you to unwrap these ones before we duplicated them. That's alright. What I want you to do is not do what I did. I don't want you to duplicate these and rotate them and put them in place until after you've actually unwrapped the first flower. And unwrapping this bulb is actually no big deal. So let's go into the bulb real quick. I'm going to select it all. Go into top view. Hit U and choose unwrap. And you can see it unwraps pretty good. We can take these and line them up if we want to, but really we don't need to. Let's just go ahead and scale it down. I could even use this texture if I wanted to by scaling it down and grabbing it and moving it on top of this yellow center. So if I wanted to use that flower texture, I could. For these ones, I would go around the edge and just like the leaf, use Control E to mark this seam. Select all of it, go into top view again, and this time we're going to use U and project from view. So now we've got the top of the flower and the bottom of the flower straight and flat, and we can texture it any way we want to. The reason that I did the mark seam was the same thing for the leaf, because if we wanted to, I could have the top of the flower and I could move it off to the side, and we could actually texture the bottom and the top of the flower separately. I don't think it's as important with a petal as it is with a leaf, because you've got the veins going in two different directions on the leaf. Yeah, I'm probably going to leave these together. So that actually makes unwrapping this a little easier, because from top view for each one of them, just doing it project from view is going to give us a nice unwrapping. So this is turning out easier than I even thought it would. I thought I had to mess with each one of them individually, but this makes it quick and easy. One last one to do. U and project from view. So what I'll do in the next video tutorials, I'll probably join these all so that I have them all on the UVs at the same time, and it'll be all unwrapped and laid out.